Hey guys, Andy N, spoken label, back in the house. Sunday afternoon, it's freezing. So that's all I'm going to say. We've got a dear, dear friend of me today, and we've got a fantastic Steve Pottinger. And we just talked about it, Steve, weren't we? How
Hmm.
many years ago was it we first met?
It's too many.
Too many. I had
It's
more
too
hair.
many. It's a
I
long
had
time.
more hair than I've got now. And I think
I
yours,
probably do.
and you probably, I know you did definitely. So,
Yeah.
like I said, yeah, it's kudos to John, my friend Jeff Armour. I met you through Qatar Anniversary. He did a headline spot for us over in
That would,
Tilsey, I think it was. And that was,
yeah. I can't think how long ago that was.
yeah,
If I
a
thought
few.
about it, I've got somewhere a list of all the gigs I've done. I didn't start it at the beginning, but I did start fairly soon after. And
Awesome.
I'd be able to find it, I think.
Yeah, well, we don't worry about that, right? So it's just going to age the pair of us anyway. So now Steve itself is got an extensive publishing history, an extensive performing career, and does so much more. So I always ask people, Steve, to give people a little bit of introduction to yourself. But I don't even know where to start with you. You've been around for a while, and you've done so much stuff. So,
Hmm.
what? Just tell us briefly a little bit about yourself, and we'll do it that way.
Okay. Well, I think when I started doing poetry, like performing poetry, there wasn't the structure that there is now. Um, and I fell into it. I always feel there's a lot of sort of lucky accidents along the way if you get into doing this kind of thing. And I had a whole series of lucky accidents. I was living in Leeds. I was twiddling my thumbs. I had nothing much to do, and there was a thing called Leeds Poetry Group that advertised in an alternative newspaper. This is how long ago it was, um, and they met in a pub at the bottom of the street. And I thought, well, I've got no excuse, and I'd never shared the fact I wrote poetry with anybody. It was like a little shameful secret, that you were just like, no, if I say that, you're just going to be ostracized. And I went down to this event, and it was literally four people sitting around a table with a pint each in one of the back rooms of the pub. And I listened, and then they said, do you want to read a poem? And I shared a poem. And this is going way back, it wasn't going to be the best thing in the world. And I genuinely thought they'd turn around and go, sling you up, mate. That's disgusting. Don't you dare ever call yourself a poet. And all that happened was they went, all right, carried on drinking their pints. And that got me into it. And I found they gave me a couple of opportunities to get up behind the mic. I found I really loved it. I was, as we all are at that time in your life, I was relatively young and arrogant and thought that I was doing the best poetry there's ever been in the history of poetry ever. Um, and yeah, I just kept going and really, really, it's that connection that you get when you perform. The connection with an audience is the thing for me. It's when maybe somebody comes up after and goes, I don't like poetry, but that was all right, and you're like, yes. It's
Winning.
stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you completely, mate, with it. So, like I said, people said, well, we've known each other a long time, me and you, Steve. And I'm like that myself when my story was identical to yours, really. First
Mm.
place I read, I think there was two men and his dog. Right? So, yeah.
Yeah. As long as the dog likes the poem, you're laughing.
Yeah, exactly, mate. So now, like I said to you, there's a lot I could talk about your background, Steve, today, but I want to really today talk about your new book,
Mhm.
which, as of recording, is not out yet, but it is imminently. So,
Mm.
so now I thought this was a tremendous book. It really was. So I want to talk about first of all, then, where did the title "Snapshots from the Fall of Home" come from?
It took a while to get there, I'll be honest.
Hmm.
I knew what I wanted in the book, and I knew a lot of the poems that were going to go in. I mean, there were some changes right up till until it fairly close to it going off to the printers, but largely I was there, and I was thinking, right, back when I first started, I never used to think about, is there a theme for this book? What's the
Hmm.
overarching, narrative? You just put a book out because,
Done
blimey,
that
well,
for
wouldn't
them.
you? And it's only recently, in the way that poetry and spoken word has developed, that I've watched and gone, yeah, yeah, okay, you need to be a bit more, put a bit more thought into this, the same way as you would with poems. And I went through a list of things which were a bit crass and a bit obvious. And then I thought, well, what I've got here really in my mind with the poems is they're all snapshots. They're all looking at moments. Some are personal, some are joyous, some are angry. But it's trying to say that in the world we live in, there's horrors and there's also little bits, there's things that are good as well. And it's that mixture of beauty and ugliness and hope and fury and despair and everything. It's all in there. And I wanted to just pick bits out. And the first poem in the book actually came from a photo that someone had put up on social
Oh,
media of a group of us from when we were back when we were
wow.
really young. And there's that thing of seeing yourself 30, 35 years on and going, Lord.
I've got
Uh,
photographs like that, yeah, 20 years ago in
yeah.
that case. Yeah, I know you do. Oh, wow.
And so suddenly I was like, well, there's a photo. And some of the others, because I tend to write quite visually, they felt like little snapshots. Here, I'm inviting you into this little, here's a 2 minute video or whatever. Um, and that gave me the key. And then it was like, well, yeah, what else? Well, snapshots from the fall of home, because I think the world I'm living in now is not the world that I was either led to believe we'd be living in 2024, or anything like as hopeful as the world that I was in back at the time when, that photo was taken that someone shared on social media. So, and that kind of, yeah, I found it and I ran it past a couple of people and went, what do you think? Does that work? And they went, yeah, that was
Yeah,
it.
I think it does definitely, and I think it's great for the book itself because the book, you're right, the book is a very much a story told book to me in poems, and I
Mm.
loved it. I could really see some of these pieces. That's why I wrote notes down on the good few of these I want to ask you about. But
Okay.
before we get into that, I know obviously with the book itself, people see from the beginning of the book a lot of this stuff. A good part of the book's been published in magazines and stuff.
Mm.
When did you realise this was going to be the book?
Um, I think it was in the autumn. I was like, yeah, it's about 2.5. It'd been 2.5 years since I last put a book out, and it sold and been reprinted, and it was down to the last few copies. And I was like, I'm whenever it's probably the same for everybody. You create a book, you put a book together, you go out, you sell it, and everything's fresh and new and wonderful, and you think it's great. And then 2 years down the line, you're like, yeah, okay, I could have done better. There's things I could change. If I'm doing another one, it would be a step forward. And that's where I'd got to. And that made me go, okay. And I felt I had sufficient poems that I thought was strong and had something to say to make a book that didn't, there would be a minimum of pages where you go, well, he put that one in as a filler, you know. So that was where I was, and I
Never.
was like, yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, I think it's a good point because I think I've done a number of books myself, and not your level, but every book I write is a reaction to the previous book. And I think
Yeah.
I can see from what you're getting at with that straight away. Now, I was going to ask you about the first poem actually in the book anyway, next. But what made you want to start that poem off? Obviously, this photograph with friends as the first poem in the book because I think it's great. I think it's a great way to start setting your voice up for the book.
Thanks. It's an odd one, isn't it? Because for me, it was kind of like, on the one hand, it's not throwaway, but it's quite a simple poem.
Yeah,
But on the other
definitely.
hand, it it seemed to me it set everything up because it had the hopefulness of youth and then the fact that things have changed. There are people who I remember from
Agreed.
back at that time who are no longer with us. There are people whose lives have gone brilliantly and swimmingly, and there are other people who it's gone bad. And all of us undoubtedly have had times in our lives where, highs and lows, rough patches, missteps, whatever it is. And it just set it up to go, there's all of that. But yeah, I've still got that memory of the good time. I still remember those people and how hopeful we were, and innocent as well, really.
Brilliant.
And I guess when it comes at the start, that's going to get.
I think it's what it is. It's almost the happy poem before you drag it into the cringe and the dirt.
Yeah, I think possibly one thing I'm really like about this book at the minute is I thought there's a mixture in here of that works more coherently, the range of poems and the range of voices, with regard to saying, I mean, I've never been afraid from shying away from serious stuff or political sort of matters, and I'm not in this book either. But equally, I think I've learned through bettering my craft and through being exposed to the poems that other people have written. Sometimes you just read stuff and you go, that is absolute genius. And it's made me grow and improve as a poet. And so there's perhaps the stuff that I probably wouldn't have been able to write even as recently as, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago.
Yeah.
So that's good.
Yeah, I think you're right, because I'm always a believer in writing. You've always got to be moving forward anyway in everything you do. Because if you stand still, I think that's when you've got a problem as a writer. And that's why I thought this book's, it's backwards but forwards. I mean, you've done it very, very skillfully indeed with it. So now I loved the nostalgia the nostalgia and the biting commentary that came on the following poem, Love Song, actually, because I'm interested. I'm not going to directly ask you where it was set. It could be one of a number of places, but it certainly made me think of, because I grew up in Stretford in South Manchester,
right?
And that's now a ghost town and a shopping mall. They're trying to do it all up again because the Trafford Centre got built in the late 90s. That killed it. And that's what I was thinking back when I was looking at what this Love Song is, because every time you get an occasional celebrity turning up there, you see him going in stupid places, and that's why I made me think of that straight away. So, but tell us about the story behind Love Song then.
Well, I think there was quite a long period of kind of gestation for that poem. In that, I'm now living back in the town I grew up in, right, which is a place that if you'd have asked me 12 years ago if I'd ever end up here, I would go, you must be joking. It'll never happen.
Yeah, you probably put an F word before that as well, probably as well.
yeah, I probably would have. And I didn't expect to end up here, and just for lots of different reasons, things happened, and I am. And I think, like, there's a lot of people in the country, we grow up in these towns that are perhaps they've been abandoned by industry. They are the butt of everybody's jokes. People sneer at them and turn their noses up at them. And that in turn, because of the lack of investment, sorry, I'm going off and quite deep on this.
I don't mind. I don't mind.
Yeah, lack of investment and the lack of jobs and the lack of opportunity. It makes them rich pickings for people like Farage and all that kind of demagoguery of the right. But when you live there, you realise there's a lot more to it than that. I live here; it's lovely. People are great. I mean, like everywhere, it's got its share of folks that you go, really, but there's some wonderful people. The humour's great. The kind of sense of community is still here, but equally, there's a lot of petty crime. There's a lot of people struggling to get by. There's homelessness. There's a lot of drugs. And I wanted to write about that in a way that didn't just hit you over the head with it's rubbish here, and this is why it's rubbish, because that's dull. And I can't think what it was. It was just looking at what people go, why would you want to be there? And I'm like, well, yeah, we haven't got this. We don't get coach loads of tourists. We haven't got great views. There isn't a palace. There isn't a football stadium, you know, and on like that. And so it kind of, I hope it sets it up one way, but then those last couple of lines say, yeah, you know, and I think there's going to be, I hope when I go around gigging with it, there'll be people who go, yeah, that sounds like where I'm from.
Yeah,
Because most of us are from places like that.
We are, yeah. And that's why I want to talk about the next piece, actually. What I want to talk about is when, and I've just realised I've not got the title down this next one. The one about your markets, and I've not got the title down for that. I apologise.
Oh, in praise of the hardiness of market traders.
I've just realised I didn't write it down, that one. Yeah, but where I grew up, actually, I grew up in Stretford, it's on the borderlands of Urmston, and they used to have a big market there. That's gone now. And I could really relate to that piece because I grew up in the market all the time with my mum and dad. They used to take me there. My mum actually, would you believe, when this is how times changed, she used to go and do occasionally, it didn't cost much to do, go and do homemade scones, selling them on the stall. And me and my sister used to get dragged there when like 9 and 10. And it's like, that piece really hit me hard because of that. It was hard. It's a hard job being a market seller.
Oh man. Yeah. I mean, like, you know, it's on the sunny summer days. I mean, there's not many. First of all, the market here is way smaller than it was. It's on 3 days a week, and there's probably one of them where there's kind of a dozen stalls. Whereas when I was a kid, it was all the way up and down the marketplace.
Yeah, exactly. Where we were.
You know, and that's the same everywhere. But it was basically there's a place that does, you know, pet food and bird food and all the rest of it. And I used to go along, and this woman was lovely. And then I went one time, she went, no, I've had it. I'm getting a proper job. And what can you say? It's 5 o'clock in the morning on like this time of year, you're freezing your bits off.
Yeah.
And what are you gonna make? You know? And she just gave up. But then this other woman's come in, and she's equally lovely. And it was just, I mean, there's that element within the book of wanting to sing the praises as well of people who don't normally get recognized or have their praises sung. You know, there's a whole, the last vestiges perhaps of that older world and that older working class world as well.
Yeah, I think you're dead right. I think we're both at the stage generation where we can remember this. When you start going to the next generation, they wouldn't have had such experiences. It'd be a very different world when they get to our age. And there's a fear in me that people will have forgotten what we come from. That's why I think that powerful, great piece. And I also really enjoyed this poem because you wouldn't have known this when we met originally. I'm just left last year working for the civil service. I've been working in the back office of a court for 11 years. So that piece really hit me hard. It did. It showed, I think, the way the government looks down on people sometimes. And before to do the job I used to do, I met a few of the ministers, and some are still witchy in power. And I'll tell you a funny story about one of them off mic, because I'm not going to get sued for saying this on camera.
Excellent. I love those kind of ones.
Yeah, it's a good one to sell. That's what I'm saying. I'll tell you off mic. It's not been recorded.
Right, okay.
But you're right of it. What I really enjoyed about this piece was I thought the rhythm was really structured, really tight in it. Your poems always are, Steve. But I love the fact that this one was all the stanzas were 3 lines. Apart from the last line where you broke your rhythm. Was that on purpose?
Yeah. Hang on, I'm going to have to. I'll have to open the book because things like that. I'm like, hold on. This is where it takes me forever to find it. Oh, the Polski Sklep, is it? No.
Hang on. I've not got it open myself, actually. I just wrote, and this and the one about the government ministers.
Ah, no, I know. Sorry. Yeah. It was, it's using the spacing. So I know where I've got to go, I think. No, I don't. It's typical.
Oh, it's the perks.
It's typical that whenever I know, I'm there. I've found the one that I know follows it.
Tell you.
No, the fact it was 4 lines, that wasn't particularly. It was more just the sort of the spacing of the 3 lines beforehand were, and that one it was just like no, I've got 4 lines. Nothing
Yeah.
more in it.
Yeah, I think poems are like that sometimes, they are, when it's like they got minds of their own, haven't they? You're thinking, right, I will get this all in 3 lines per stanza. And the last stanza comes along and no, you won't.
Yeah. I don't think that's something else that's come with, I mean, I'll still go, I'll go along to poetry workshops and I'll listen to other poets and learn from other poets. And I think it took me, I mean, part of the learning of a craft of being a poet, apart from the performance side, if you do performance, is just learning you've got to find out what shape the poem wants to be. The number of times that I'm sure you'll have done the same. You start off and you go, right, this poem is doing this. And you'll get into it and you'll go, no, we're not, we're off this way.
Yeah.
And it takes you off somewhere else entirely. And it's just trusting that and not trying to just keep hitting it into the shape you want with a hammer.
Oh yeah, completely. Yeah, that's the book. Like poems are buggers. They're usually the best ones are the ones that don't behave and don't do what you want them to do. I found that experience. Now, I was interested in your quite experimental piece actually here, plodding on. We've put the here in brackets, and I want to learn a bit more about where the content is pretty self-explanatory to me in this one, but I was very interested in learning what made you want to do it this way, putting the here in brackets to begin the sum of the lines, and then we've got also the italics coming into the piece as well.
Yeah, what it was, I mean, this happens quite a bit with my poems. This came out of a meeting with the woman in the story. I was sitting having a coffee, and she came along in a motorized wheelchair with a dog, and can I share your table? I was like, yeah. And that was it. Conversation ensued. And one of those wonderful, it sometimes happens, where you meet a stranger and they tell you so much about their lives, and they go and you're like, how did that just happen? How is it 20 minutes ago, I didn't know that woman from a hole in the ground, and now she has the confession to a stranger kind of thing that goes on. And also I was in a place a town that I don't know well. So viewing the town with fresh eyes, as well as seeing some similarities to where I am. And the putting the here in brackets, I started off, I wrote it just here. And then I thought, well, no, because by putting it in brackets, my conceit was, and I don't know, I hope it worked, was the idea that in the same way as with the love song, it represents a lot of places. The town I was in and the woman's situation, I don't think are by any means unique. So I wanted, almost like you're going, you can replace this here, insert the name of any town, stroke village, whatever that you know that fits, where the hands had fallen off the clock in the shopping centre, and the italics in there was, which you asked about, that was this phrase that she just used. She told me all this stuff, and you'd think, and then she'd just go, yeah, but we plod on, don't we? And I'd be like, yeah, we do plod on. You're right. And that that stoicism and that stubbornness to continue to have the generosity of heart as well that she had after all the things that had happened, that really struck me. Yeah, and again, I wanted therefore to commemorate, celebrate that kind of response to the difficulties of life.
Yeah, it's very British, that piece of me as well. That's why I really liked it, to be honest with yourself. But that's why the next piece I want to ask you about, this is the one you caught me out on, I'll be honest with you. Because I know when we had a good talk last time I saw you in person some years ago, we did. This is back in the days I used to drink beer. Please, this was a few years ago, but it was like when you one of your poems is mentioned to William Carlos Williams, which I love William Carlos Williams. He's one of my favorite American poets, and I was just like, oh, whoa! I thought, so when did you first get into William Carlos Williams then?
Um, I can't. When you say get into, I know a few. One being the
Mm.
poem, which I've, as people do, it's almost like doing doing that a pastiche of, I have eaten is it's become almost like a kind of social media poetry meme, and it was just at the time when I wrote it. I would sometimes when you're so absolutely furious about what is going on, about the deliberate taking of wrong steps because they will be profitable steps and everything else can go hang. Sometimes if you're really infuriated by it, as I am and was when I wrote the poem, it's very it's way too easy just to do a really furious rant that makes you feel better. It's
Yeah.
great draft, you know what I mean? It's like write it, great,
Yeah.
and then perhaps set it to one side because we're all kind of trying to manage a level of frustration and hopelessness at some elements of what's going on, I think. I'm sure it isn't just me. And sometimes hearing it given you again is just, you're like, no, I can't deal with that. Whereas William Carlos Williams' poem just lent itself perfectly,
Yeah, it
you
does.
know.
I know the poem it's on, and yeah, I'm a big fan of Carlos Williams' work, and yeah, people wonder the piece we're talking about is just to say 2023, an oil executive holds forth, and yeah, no, it does. It's absolutely superb, and it was the one poem in the book it caught me out in a good way, right? So,
Hey,
so
that's
yeah,
that's really interesting. I mean, for me also, it's one of those cases where sometimes less is more.
yeah,
It's because that's only a really small poem and it's
yeah,
dead simple,
yeah,
which makes it great to kind of
yeah,
use for your and use as raw material. But
yeah.
um, but it said everything I needed to say.
No, it's a cracking piece, really is, Steve. Now, the
Thank
last
you.
piece I want to talk about you here today is when you get sneaky at the end of the book. Now, should we tell people about what sneaky trick you pulled off at the end of the book, or
Yeah, I don't feel that it's not like it's a spoiler alert.
no?
No, I mean all it is I don't know which book I started doing this, but I thought, you know what, you get to the end of a book and you say everything you've got to say, and then sometimes I think I just had a couple of spare pages the one time, and I thought, well, why leave them blank?
Yeah,
So it was like, hey, here's your bonus, and and that what I liked about doing it this time, I think for me, and I hope it worked. It was kind of like a bookend to the piece.
yeah, I got that. I saw it straight away,
Cool.
and I thought it was a
Yeah.
great way of wrapping, bringing everything in full circle straight away. And I loved
Right.
this the fact of
Yeah.
what you did at the end of it. And I thought, you sneaky git. And I thought, I loved it.
Brilliant. I love it. I love it when you go, I wonder if anybody's going to pick up on this, and you have. So
Yeah.
even if nobody else does, Andy, I'm a happy man there.
I'll bet you will be, mate. Right. Well, we'll do the wrap up questions, a couple of wrap up questions to wrap up this part, Steve. Anyway, I want to
Okay.
give you time to read a few pieces out of the second half for us. Now, I know you've got a number of gigs lined up for certainly coming up into February and beyond, haven't you? So tell people what gigs you've got coming up first of all, then.
Um, so I've been, because obviously you've got a book, you want to try and get out and promote it. And so currently, where are we going off to? There's quite a few gigs up north. I mean, I'll have been in Manchester by the time this comes out.
Yeah, and I'm
Uh,
annoyed as well. So I can't do that one either. To be honest, it's typical, really. But
right, okay. It
yeah,
happens. It's
yeah,
the one thing, isn't it? You go, great, everybody will be able to come along,
yeah.
and then they go, actually, that doesn't work. But I'm going quite a lot of gigs up north, Huddersfield, Wakefield, going to Shrewsbury, Worcester. There's more. Doing after that. There's about 7 or 8 gigs that I've got lined up at the moment, and I'm still looking to do more. I've got there's a couple more that we're looking at sorting in the next few days as well. But I just love getting out and gigging. I mean, because as I said earlier on, it's that connection with people. It's that chance. The great thing about poetry, as we all know, is it's your chance to say what you want in the way you want to say it. And that doesn't mean you don't learn from other people or you shouldn't be open to other influences, but it's your unique voice. And the strength of poetry is that it allows people to do that and to go and have a night where I get the chance to do that, but also quite often I go along and can be amazed by what other people do. I mean, I was in Doncaster a couple of days ago. It was a lovely night in Doncaster, and there was just some cracking poetry, really, really good. That you're like, last time I was there was 4 years ago. That's 4 years on. I'm seeing some of the same people there and getting the chance to hear what they've been doing and how their work has progressed and what they've got to say. And it's glorious.
No, definitely, I agree with you on that one. Do you have any more creative projects lined up you can reveal next?
Do I mean,
I'm not necessarily talking about books, projects. Are these projects?
No, I'll be busy with this book for a while. I mean, I'm part of a little collective down here called Poets, Prattlers and Pandemonialists.
Is that you, Emma, and Dave? Is it?
That's it. Yeah.
I wasn't sure if that's still active. I was going to ask you about that today, so you can tell us about that
then. We're very much active. I mean, we put on poetry nights. We met up. This is when I came back here, and they knew each other, and I met them separately, and then we all three went for a pint, which turned into several pints because that's how we were at the time.
As it does, yeah.
And we just got on and had very. We're all keen for something more to be happening in the sort of poetry, spoken word arts scene in our area, and so we set up Poets, Prattlers and Pandemonialists, and we put on monthly nights, which are still online because we had a great venue, but it closed. We do an open mic regularly at Arena Theatre in Wolverhampton. We've done 2 spoken word theatre shows and taken them around, which has been great. We're heavily involved in Wolves Lit Fest as well. Sort of we're looking after the fringe room and writers groups, because, well, it's what I said already about everybody's distinct voice and the roar of the grease paint. We just love all of that, so that's what we do.
Sounds good to me, mate. Sounds good to me. So, right, okay, we'll do the hard sell now, right? As I was joking to you before in this one, to wrap up part 1, mate.
Right.
Where are people best getting your book from, first of all?
It's coming out officially in mid-February or late February, and it will then be available in all the usual places. It's got an ISBN, but the best place to get it always, and it's true for any other poet who is out there flogging their wares, is direct from me at a gig or from the publishers, which is ignitebooks.co.uk. And it's simple enough to do that. And it's as cheap as it would be if you go through huge, allegedly tax evading multinationals.
Yeah, we won't name names there, right? But obviously, where are people best getting hold of yourself then? Say they want to book you for a gig.
Oh, I've got a website, stevepottinger.co.uk, and on that there are every now and then I write a blog. There's details generally of gigs that I've got in the forthcoming next few weeks that I update every month. There's links to quite a lot of the videos I've got on YouTube. Yeah. All the usual stuff you'd expect someone to have on their website, really.
Sounds good to me, mate. So sounds good to me. It's a cracking website as well. So I was on it before. So right. Anyway, guys and girls, we will wrap up part 1 here. So I want to give Steve plenty of time to read out some poems in his book. It's been a pleasure, mate. I can't believe it's probably been about 10 years since last time I spoke to you, actually. That's embarrassing.
It's sad, isn't it? And shocking. I mean, I just go, where did those years disappear
I
to?
know. Next time
Still
we
in my
speak,
head, I'm still like about 25, so I don't understand how it can happen.
I'm 25 with the 18, mate. That's all I'm going to say, right? Or is it, in my case, it's 25 mentally, physically 125. It feels some days getting up nowadays. So. So, right, guys, girls, we will see you all in 2 shakes of the dice.